Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Rules for Retrogrades. I'm here with my brother Tim Gordon. I, as you know, am Dave Gordon, and we have the distinct honor today of being with Dr. G.C. Dilsaver, Catholic author and psychologist. Dr. G.C. Dilsaver is a psychologist and theologian with an advanced degree from the Pontifical Institute of Marriage and Family. According to the Catholic University of America, Dr. Dilsaver's book, Imago Dei Psychotherapy, enunciated the foundational principles of the first fully integrated Christian psychotherapeutic conceptualization. Dr. Dilsaver has thus been called the father of Christian psychology. He practiced in the mental health field while presenting professionally on the national level and local level. And after nearly a decade as a practitioner within the mental health system, Dr. Dilsaver formally and definitively repudiated what he terms the failed mental health profession and the mental health cabal. Dr. Dilsaver is the author of several books, including one of my personal favorites, which Tim and I quote extensively in No Christian Feminism, called The Three Marks of Manhood, in addition to his more recent Psychomoralitics book. Welcome to Rules for Retrogrades, Dr. Dilsaver. How are you doing?
Fine, David. Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you on. It is, as I say, our distinct honor. I have long been an admirer of yours. And just on a personal note, your writing is really powerful. You are an eloquent and powerful writer, and I can't say just how much The Three Marks of Manhood did for me as a young man entering into marriage. I tell people on Twitter often, and I am not exaggerating, it was a formative work for me, and it kind of opened my eyes up to the idea of a kind of majestic and altruistic and benign patriarchy. When you hear the word in modern culture, it's so often used as a pejorative term. So, I'm very familiar with your works, and again, you were very formative for me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I wrote that book actually when I was getting married, right beforehand and finishing up afterwards. And that's so it was, it's that ideal, and it's an ideal that after all these years I'm still striving for, obviously, but a lot of people have a problem because they go, well, look at that ideal, we can't live that. I say, it doesn't matter. You still strive for it. Have the humility to continue striving. You don't lower the ideal to fit where you are. That's not Christianity. So as the Lord Jesus Christ said, "Be ye perfect, the Father in heaven is perfect." So it was an ideal that I wrote in my early on, and yet it's still an ideal that I strive for and I want to inculcate in my children. And so praise God. So I'm very thankful that you had something advantage you from that book.
You said something, Dr. Dilsaver, right before we started rolling tape. I liked it a lot. It's that especially in toxic times like ours, one has to take an intentional approach to both the sexes and to marriage. This goes against the conventional wisdom of effortlessness as the watchword of effective marriages, doesn't it? I mean, one time Vince Vaughn said something good about acting. He said, what's cool now, what's in with actors is to pretend that they don't have to work at their craft, but I want to make that out. And the cool thing about basketball players like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, the two greatest of all time, is that they never faltered under those delusions, that effortlessness, comes from talent or something like that. And good marriages come from effortfulness, right? That's what you meant by intentional.
Right. Now, we're not going to digress into arguing about goats, are we?
Well, I don't think it's possible to, because I don't even like Jordan, but that's a closed casket, my friend.
It's a black hole. Yeah. It's a black hole, though. There's a lot of LeBron fans out there.
I gotta know, you're not a LeBron guy.
Black hole, all net, Yeah, but I'm going, I don't know. So let's but you're right though, the intentionality, because, and this is really what we do in psychomoralitics, because too, if you look at the modern mental health system, they don't really factor in gender. I mean, it's not an issue. Well, hello. And today, in our spirituality, in a lot of these marital therapies, they don't talk about this femininity or masculinity. I'm going, as if what? Now, wait a minute. As if here in this third millennium, we got it all wired as far as gender goes? Yeah, right. We are so confused. We don't even know how confused we are. And this happened a long time ago. We were talking about, subsequent generations too, back in the boomers, and even before that. They were already getting confused and losing the understanding of what it meant to be male and female. There's compromises being made left and right, and today we're paying the price for it.
It's integral to the person, right? You can't parse your masculinity or your femininity from your identity, and that's one of the tricks of the left. And, you do have this concept of psychomoralitics, and that's what we're primarily here to talk to you about today. I could go on all day, about the 3 marks of manhood, but we do want to get to your most recent work, your 2018 Psychomoralitics, where you really make an indictment of the modern mental health profession. So let me ask you, let me start off this way. You charge, Dr. Dilsaver, that the mental health profession is not only erroneous in its conceptualization and a dismal failure in its efficacy, but is gravely harmful to the human spirit. Can you explain this concept to our audience, please?
Sure. And again, let's start with gender. So there in the Republic of California.
People's Republic, right?
People's Republic. Yeah, that's right. It is illegal, unethical. They will take your license away as a mental health provider if you speak about definitive gender, if you help somebody live in accord with their chromosomal makeup. This is unprofessional. You are bad, evil. You will be fined and you will be kicked out of the profession. So what's that mean? Well, number one, it means anybody who's an authentic Christian, authentic Catholic, anyone who's even in touch with natural law cannot be part of that licensure program in California and most of the states. It's immoral, it's unethical in and of itself. So the mental health system, though, has been doing this for decades. They've been on the cutting edge of pushing perversity, of going against the traditional family, going against femininity and masculinity, and that's everything from the medication to the psychotherapies. The medications in the late 60s and the 70s, Prozac, which was the first big antidepressant, was in the book Listening to Prozac, which was a Prozac book, but it was known as the feminist drug because it allowed women to go into that male workplace and function. It allowed them to become less than they were and be these race of who they were supposed to be and function in this brutalizing masculine world. So that's from the beginning. And now we have the ADHD drugs who are there to dampen down the masculinity of little boys.
Right.
So this system has been there from the beginning, pushing perversity, pushing non-traditional families. The APA, the American Psychological Association, just came out with a study in this last year, I believe it was. And they said that, we've been studying for the last 10, 15 years this position paper on masculinity. And we came to the definitive conclusion that traditional masculinity is unhealthy. So, now my first question was, where the heck did the APA ever find any traditional men?
Yeah. A museum somewhere or something?
Yeah, really.
In Montana?
Yeah, maybe.
Alaska?
But this is their position. And so these are evil people. However, we're just talking about morals here. We're not talking about the science, nothing else, which we'll get to. But in morals, what has happened here? We have to realize this for the fact. The mental health system is the moral magisterium of our culture.
Right.
It determines who is good and who is bad. It determines if you're a sinner or you're a saint. Now, both of you guys, again, the retrogrades, you are evil. You are sinners. You are criminals. You're outlaws.
And Tim is.
Tim is.
Now, look, we're criminals. We're outlaws, even in certain quarters of the Catholic landscape. So, yeah, they're not alone in that categorization.
No, but why? Because Catholicism has been infiltrated by the mental health system. Catholic charities is neither Catholic nor charitable.
Yeah.
It totally is bought into the mental health system. And now I had a bishop talking to me, and we're going. We had a group of religious nuns, contemplative nuns, that are working with me, and they're talking to the bishop about it. And he goes, "Well, is Dr. Dilsaver and Psychomoralitics, are they licensed by the state?" And they say, "No, he repudiates that." He goes, "Oh, that's a problem, I think, isn't it? I mean, we have to be careful." I'm going, "Are you kidding me? How in the world is that? Really?" So the study of the soul, the treatment of the soul, psychology and psychiatry, and we want the state, any state, no matter when it was, but the state today, the secular satanic state today, to govern and control and rule the study and treatment of the soul? I mean, how absurd. What is this bishop thinking? This makes no sense whatsoever. But why? We've accepted this mental health system. And yes, they may give lip service. It's okay to be Catholic, that's fine. We want to really respect your diversity. No, but guess what? What's the bottom line? The mental health conceptualization. You must abide by that. Everything else is secondary. And of course, that's contrary, intrinsically contrary to Catholicism, which is absolute and permeates every aspect of our lives.
Right. Teleologically, you said this about 3 minutes, Dr. Dilsaver. The mental health system is all about inculcating perversity or whatever. But philosophically, metaphysically, it's all about materialism, scientism, and determinism. Can you say a word on this in a culture that now, the pop culture finds itself having to condemn the opioid crisis, but it can't see itself through ideologically like a good doctor to first causes, because if it did so, then it would be finding its way back to Aristotle, to natural law, the true virtues, and really, if you follow that trail of breadcrumbs all the way, you go to Thomas Aquinas. Can you explain why an opioid crisis is the inevitable conclusion of a deterministic health system that has nothing to do with the soul, the psyche?
Right. Because, bottom line is that they see the human person as a completely materialistic entity, reject hylomorphism. And so in doing so, then the person has no transcendental value whatsoever. The person as a purely material entity is someone that can be controlled. And that's exactly what the health system does. This is what they do with the perversity. They say, you go ahead and choose. Choose what barnyard animal you want to be. Yeah, absolutely. Knock yourself out. Be free. Pick whatever style you want to wallow in. And that's their idea of freedom. But go ahead and say, hey, wait a minute. No, wait. I want to do my duty. I want to assert my right to do my duty to God. I want to seek the truth. And you will be the enemy of the state. That is not allowed. Period. And so reducing us down to that status means we can be enslaved. And so that's why the mental health system is the perfect tool for the totalitarian state.
That's right.
It's been weaponized, in fact, right? And you see this even in seminaries where priests have strong affinity for the Blessed Virgin Mary. They have a great devotion to the Virgin Mary, and they have a strong devotion to the virtue of chastity. Then they're told by some of these bad bishops or these bad rectors that, hey, you don't have a developed sense of sexuality. So then they send them to a psychological re-education camp, and they say, they weaponize psychology to basically take people away from the faith. And this is detailed in the book Goodbye, Good Men. And I forget the author's name escapes me now, but maybe you could touch on that too. I hate to jump in.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. I've worked with a lot of these priests that go to these systems. And I tell you, they're back east. There's two of them back east. They're very big. There's other ones up north. And they've cleaned these places up a lot, actually. It was under John Paul II. He really did a lot of pontifical visitations, cleaned a lot of things up because they were cesspool. They were cesspool. But they still have the wrong conceptualization. Mental health conceptualization and the Catholic worldview cannot be reconciled. So let me go in there, and I work with a lot of priests. They come out here. They'll get permission to come out and work with me. I work with nuns and monks, and so this is the alternative for them. We even have a house of studies here where they can come instead of being indoctrinated, and we work with them as they totally and completely in accord with the true anthropology and a true Christian spirituality. So, but and going back to Tim's question a bit, how is that opioid crisis? What's that? How is that? Of course, it's a natural result of this materialism because it's suicidal. It's suicidal. A culture of death, yes, because ultimately, what's wrong with suicide? And if I want to kill myself, well, who cares? I mean, it's totally acceptable, because I'm a material being. It doesn't matter. That is this secular existentialism and that nihilism that's pervasive in this culture. And yes, they pretend, oh no, we can't have anybody die from the virus. Oh no, like what? This culture? Like, I'm hearing
it's a culture of death.
About this. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah. What a joke.
The state
about life.
The medical state can't decide whether or not to camouflage or to celebrate the instantiation of the culture of death, right? I mean, it is weird. You get COVID-19, which is obviously, I think, at this point the mask is off. It's a globalist kind of thing. Even it's a real cold. Yeah, but the point is, but the thing is, it's only when it's convenient, when it's expedient for them to combat death and the wiles of death. They're not the marks of death in terms of sin, but suffering, right? They combat suffering, right? They give you these opioid drugs that ostensibly help you away from the stuff. But the rest of the time, the same leftists out of their mouth, a lot of them are the medical establishment leftists, who are all deterministic, all materialists. They say, suicide's good. Doctor-assisted suicide is something we ought to push for. It's part of choice. So they can't tell whether or not to camouflage it or to celebrate it, and I think that's the real tell, isn't it?
Right, exactly. Well, they neither embrace life or death, and they put the blinders on. It's a coping mechanism, and they're not even as practitioners able to face death, even though they deal with it all the time, because they compartmentalize. But this opioid crisis then is going to be about killing the pain and numbing oneself out. And that is based on not the fact that we're materialism, we're not. It's based on the soul. And even though the mental health system sees the human person as a completely materialistic entity, nonetheless, they cater to the ego. The pride and self-love. That's what they cater to. And again, by catering to that pride and self-love, by feeding that beast, they are able to manipulate people. And that's what's happening with this panic. The panic is based on people being afraid. They're afraid of their mortality. They have no baseline because they don't accept their mortality to begin with. The humiliation of physical existence. They can't accept that, so therefore they're going to panic when they're threatened. And what the state's doing, and we see how easily it's done, because we're such a vicious people on the entire West, and because of that, most of the world is able to be totally manipulated and enslaved. But they do cater to the pride and self-love, because that's what they feed. And see, that's not according to the Catholic understanding. The Catholic understanding is that ego and that pride, self-love must be abnegated. It must decrease. And on the natural level, that means for the image of God, purely natural level, the person made in God's image, analogous being, that means sharing a similar functionality of reason and volition, but not in his nature. That's what image of God means. And the angels have it and man has it. And of course, man has it also as an incarnate being. He's mortal. So that those basic truths of human existence, but they cater to that ego, that pride and self-love, which cannot handle reality. And it really can't, because God's ways are not our ways. I mean, yes, I'm afraid of death. I'm afraid of death, of course. What? I'm not afraid of not breathing? Yes, that's reality. But that's the way it is. Yes, God's ways are not our ways, and we must say yes to that, even though we don't like it. And that takes humility. That takes dying to self. That takes maturing. And so they don't do that. They do the exact opposite. And so they feed the ego, the pride and self-love. And when they feed it, they're actually exacerbating the problem. All of this so-called mental disorder, that's a misnomer. It's not mental. It's from the soul. It's about pride and self-love. You're not thinking wrong. You're sensing the truth wrong, and you're choosing wrongly. You're choosing yourself, what I want, and I don't like the way things are, so I'm going to fall into a depression and a self-pity. And I'm fighting or running away from reality. Well, this is what the mental health system helps us do. And they'll give you medication to blunt reality, or they'll tell you, you're good, you're okay, and so you put the blinders on and feed your pride and self-love, feed your self-esteem. And so this is how they only make matters worse. And again, it is enslaving to the human person.
So these are effects that we're seeing from the mental health system. But if I may just follow up, what is it inherent to the conceptualization, I guess to the self-conceptualization of the modern mental health system that makes it evil, that makes it disordered down to its very bones?
Right. Well, again, so to say mental health, so they say you're not thinking right. Get your head straight. You're not thinking right. No, it has nothing to do. A vast majority of the time, people are thinking right. So let me give you an example here. Some years ago, psychologists did one of those tests. I love these tests, but they when they get the different results than you're looking for. But they took a group of people with major depression, and then they hospitalized, and then they took a group of normals, those that were without symptoms. And the test was to determine who was more in touch with reality. Right? They want to see, of course, the more depressed you are, the more out of touch with reality you are, right? Of course. Well, it studied current events, it studied, common factors of life, and much to their surprise, it was the depressed population that was more in touch with reality. The normals were all coping. They had blinders on. Oh, it's okay. Things are fine. We'll just go through life, fat, dumb, and happy. Well, the depressed people realized life is a meat grinder. It's not fair. And so, yeah, they were depressed. Understandable. But they weren't suffering it well. Instead of maturing and saying, okay, that's the way it is. God is God and I'm not. They were crying about it. But actually, they were closer to the maturation than those normals who make this world go around and go through life, get fat, dumb, and happy, who allow evil to happen left and right. And there's semi-somnolence. So it's not mental. The mentation is correct. It's in the soul, and my saying suffering well and being able to say yes to reality. It's saying yes to reality. And we use here, now the mental health system. By the way, so the DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, is the Bible of mental health system. And it is based on symptomology. So in other words, all of the mental disorders are classified according to symptomology and constellations of symptomology. In medicine itself, that sort of nosology, a nosology is a classification of diseases, that sort of nosology is considered to be the least reliable is considered to be tantamount to quackery, if that's how you classify diseases.
Right.
The second best is go pathogenesis, how it develops, and the best, of course, etiology. What causes this? They have no idea in the mental health system. It's all theory. It's all political mishmash. It's a joke.
Can we say this again? So the hierarchy of value here is, I think this is the kind of thing that fascinates me. The best diagnosis comes from an ideology where you get to first causes. We're just doing Aristotle, right? The best analysis comes from first causes. The second best, the kind of median approach, which I think medicine uses most often, is from pathogenesis, where you just start tracking the problem from the etiology of the problem, not from the ideology of the organ or something, the system of organelles, right? And that's I guess semi-reasonable that you'd like them always to do an ideology on why was my throat hurting for 2 weeks out of the blue. And then the worst is diagnosing by symptom, right? And you're saying that the difference between a good cardiologist, which is a pretty well-established system of medicine, subsystem of medicine, and modern psych establishment, who bow down to DSM-5, is it now, is that the order of values is inverted, or it's not inverted, it's just they have nothing but symptomology. Is that what you'd say?
Right, exactly right. Now, that's not even a diagnosis, right? Because symptomology is just an observation of symptoms. There's no diagnosis.
I can tell my doc that. I'll tell you what my symptoms are right now. I don't know. Crap.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's list them up. No, but seriously, the situation is, yes, people go all the time. They go, well, yeah, observation though. They told me like exactly, what was going on. I go, well, yeah, that's the easy part. Why is it happening? And of course, what? You know what? So back in the 90s, George W. Bush proclaimed it was the year of the brain. So it is written, so it be done. So he proclaimed that because that's when we had all this advances in neuroimagery, MRIs, what have you. So the mental health system was convinced they were going to be able to see exactly what was going on in the brain and say this is the etiology of mental disorder. Today, those very psychologists and scientists that were on the cutting edge of that admit we're still decades away from having any idea. They think somehow if maybe you get better imagery, you're going to find it. And guess what? They're never going to find it because the etiology is not in the material brain. It is in the immaterial soul.
Yeah, I think one thing that you're never going to find on an EEG scan, right? I've done a million with my daughter Abby. We were talking before we fired up. You're never going to find the exercise of the martyrs, bro. Like, the exercise of the martyrs, I don't think I'd agree with Maurice Blondel on much, the Jesuit who was interested in psychology, but I did agree with him on this. The psychological determinists can never explain the exercise of the martyrs because they reduce everything in biological life to an appetite. Right. I mean, like, if you go to what I tell my philosophy students is, if you go to the zoo and you fall in the lion cage, you are SOL if that lion was night fed. Right. I mean, everything that's going through your head is you fall into the cage is I'm SOL if this was a night fed lion. Right.
Well, they call it animal altruism. Tim, they do have a supposed, an ostensible answer to that, which is that in mammals somehow have an innate drive to want to keep their genes going. So therefore, like, even at the expense of its own life, if it can save like 4 of its offspring, which share 50% of its DNA, then like a mother lioness will lay down its own life because in sacrificing 100% of its genes, it's actually saving 200% of its genes. But even that is not answered by the martyr who dies in secret.
It's in its species, yeah.
It's in a secret martyr.
But if you fall in a lion cage, right? Then you're gonna if it was a morning fed lion, you keep your life not because of lion altruism. Even I agree with you, animal altruism's a farce, a myth anyway. But except what you can never explain when you're doing some kind of science. I don't know how you make it fully ideological. But if you're trying to do a logos of the psyche, which is, I've only heard one psychologist ever talk like you, by the way. I'm almost cracking up because this guy that knows Thomas, Aristotle, all this, it's, well, what is happening? It's amazing. You're breaking the mold. But if you want to do a logos of the psyche, the soul, you're going to do something like Aristotle or Thomas, right? And you say a human being is utterly unlike, it has these two faculties, an intellect and a will, that make it utterly unlike the lion. It has nothing to, a human being can be starving. If the lion's starving and you fall in there, you're screwed. It's going to eat you. If it's not hungry, it's just going to sleep. And that's pretty much all it does, so you're not screwed. But with a human being, I can be starving, or a saint, St. Francis can be starving, and he's not going to harm, especially if it's in the middle of a fast, even a delicious-looking cow, right? Let alone another human being. Because human beings have these two capacities, intellect and will. And all I was saying is, the psych establishment, DSM-5, has nothing to say to either intellect or will. It's essentially a denial that either of them exist, right? We are treated as glorified meat machines.
We are. But like I said, but still, they know we're still do have a spiritual element to us. And that's why they only refer to the ego, my self-interest. And that's the way they manipulate people. And that's why they feed. You go to your therapist, and they're going to tell you how wonderful you are. They're going to help you cope. At least my therapist loves me. And you become addicted to your therapist, and you have self-esteem. So, but listen, now this is where we go down into the real, again, the ideology. And if you really look at it specifically, you can take it even deeper. So the human person, and you can see this in the saint, but you can also see this, it's on the natural level. The human person can say yes to absolute annihilation of himself. Now, he says yes to it. I mean, on the natural level, he can mature and say, okay, yeah, this is horrible. I'm dying. I know I'm dying. I don't have a choice. An animal can't realize that. But a person can know, and he may believe he's going to be totally annihilated. A saint does the same thing, a dark night of a soul or something. And it's when everything is dark. I don't feel safe. I feel damned. But I choose to love God anyway. There's nothing in it for them. And this is where we really go in psychomoralitics, to help people be able to choose, even though it means ego abnegation, diminishing of that pride and self-love, and the passions that emanate from that self-love. And these are the passions that St. Thomas says bind the intellect and the will. That's when you see what we call ego reactivity. It's not mental disorder. It has that, the same symptomology can come out that way. But it's ego reactivity when the passions of the ego, not all passions, but ego passions, when they bind the intellect and the will. And then we want to, but again, passions in themselves are good. It depends on what you love. And this is what psychomoralitics, this is an area that we really, I think, unpacked a lot more than even happened with Thomas. He makes some references, but there are the good passions, and you can't live the fully human life without the passions. You can't have full human flourishing, as St. Thomas says. So, but the egoistic passions diminish. So we must be able to say yes to even my own diminishment. When I diminish, then the image of God is made manifest more. The reason, the volition. And I choose reality even though I don't like it. Even though it means my mortality, even though it means possibly my annihilation. And even for the saints then, if they're going to see you make that choice, when you say, I have no hope, or Lord Jesus Christ, right? My God, why hast thou forsaken me? In his human nature, isn't truly forsaken. But still, his love for the Father not being diminished one iota. Because God is God. I love you for your own sake, because you're all good and deserve all my love. It doesn't matter. If I'm forsaken, it's not about me. It's all about you.
Right. Well, let me ask this then. The mental health system, according to your contentions, which is the union of the state, the mental health profession, and the insurance and pharmaceutical industries, which are under control of the state, is increasingly being used as a weapon to curtail socio-political freedom. How is that the case?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, that as I said, if you're today, I cannot ever recommend anybody being licensed by the state as a mental health practitioner. Every single mental health practitioner of the state is an agent of the state first and foremost. Every record they ever take, every note they ever write, they must archive and keep in their records, so that if the state requires for any reason to access those records, they must turn them over. There's zero confidentiality. You talk about, well, the mental health, the medical profession. Are we, life or death? What is this? They have this. They don't know what they are. Well, this is the same thing. They talk about the HIPAA privacy protections.
Right.
It's a joke. There's zero confidentiality. So in other words, and I fought this battle, that's why I'm out of the system, because I obviously wasn't going to change them. But I've had someone I've worked with, a man I worked with 5 years ago, and his wife has gone off the deep end, and now she wants to divorce him. She's hostile toward him. So she gets her lawyer to petition, and then they want me to turn his records over to her to use against him.
Right.
Hello, what about the Hippocratic Oath, right? Do no harm. This is beyond unconscionable. So, number one, every single mental health practitioner out there is now an agent of the state. And so every person has to understand the dangers therein. Don't everything you say to that practitioner can be used against you and will be used against you to do whatever they have to do. Take away your right to bear arms, take away, even to involuntarily commit you, or sentence you to, in a mental health court. They have mental health courts now, totally extrajudicial, and they sentence you to lifelong medication. Either go to jail or we're going to shoot you up every month with these antipsychotic medications to keep you in a chemical straitjacket. And so, and now again, and you and I, we're all, and most of your listeners are actually considered to be those that need to be somehow curtailed.
This is very comforting.
Yeah, I know. Well, it is, but it's the reality, and you're exactly right. And that's what we have to take. This is a good time to start really reevaluating and making our choices and preparing ourselves for this militancy and preparing ourselves that we're going to be considered outlaws by this culture. And don't think they're benign. They're not.
We saw that. We saw that under the Obama administration, right? They were, with some of these gun control measures, they were asking for psychologists to actually inform on people to the government in order to take away their weapons. And there's an analogy here with the brown shirting of, certain, basically, what's the word? Essential employees or essential functionaries of the state of society. Like school teachers are now mandatory reporters. Doctors, nurses are mandatory reporters. So you have the government basically tightening its noose on the American people, on our freedoms, by making certain people who are indisposable for basically the functioning of a decent society. It's making them into spies.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely right. No, that's right. That's why this licensing by the state is so dangerous, especially when you're talking about the soul, you're talking about this person in the image of God. There's no way in the world. We have to push back against this. There has to be an alternative. We have to reject that mental health system. And by the way, the mental health profession, the American Psychological Association, also, they were found out by investigative reporting, they were helping with the different torture sites across the world, and obviously, we know that Islam is the arch enemy of Catholicism, but I think the bigger enemy right now we have to worry about is our own, government being, that's what we have to worry about, coming down the road. And they were torturing. These are doctors, but they are helping the government torture people. And believe me, it's not just going to be isolated to the Islamists, okay? It's going to come after the Catholics as well.
Yeah. The secular humanist globalist agenda is maybe more insidious and I think a greater threat than Islam at this point right. In the COVID lockdown.
And who's a bigger threat to them? not the Islamists. We are the Catholics. We are public enemy number one.
I was going to say it. Yeah.
So what does a truly Christian alternative to the modern mental health regime look like in your view? And I know that's a huge question, but if you can kind of do your best at distilling it down to its basic elements for our audience, because I know you've had a lot of time to ruminate on this.
Well, I wrote the book. So David, so Psychomoralitics, and that is the book that answers all those questions. It's a science. This is a science. That means it is an expostulated, formal body of knowledge. You can see right there. It explicates what the cause of erectivity or the symptoms of mental disorder are. It's right there. Anybody can look at it and read it and study it. And it's again, this is not a book that is acceptable in mainstream society. It's amazing. I mean, this is not. You cannot question the mental health system. This is it's heresy. But this is the science, and so. Whereas the mental health system is not a science, it's again based on symptomology. It just pontificates about what a mental disorder is, totally arbitrary. Whereas, and again, because of that fact, it has no efficacy. People don't get better. Sometimes they get better in spite of it. Sometimes there's some therapists out there that bring something into it. But the only reason a person gets better in the mental health system is in spite of that faulty conceptualization, in spite of it. Now, in the Psychomoralitics, you get better because of the conceptualization. It's true, and I would challenge anybody out there. To look at that book and show me where it's faulty, how it goes against anything that has any semblance of Catholic theology or perennial philosophy. And so it's nothing I made up. But the problem with it is this. It talks about, again, ego abnegation. It talks about humility and accepting humiliation to so abnegate the ego. It talks about it's okay to feel bad. In fact, that all persons deep down feel bad about themselves. We're contingent beings. We're weak. We're overwhelmed. That's okay. That's reality. We learn to say yes to that and suffer that well, and then we're not afraid to live a life fully, embracing the depths of the sorrows, but also the heights of the joy, and the whole time having peace and courage. And that's what we need today. We need something to encourage us to face, again, that totalitarian state, that Leviathan that overwhelms us. Of course it does. But you have to have the deepest courage. And now we see that missing so in our culture with this panic. Everybody's so afraid. And because that's all they care about is their physical well-being. And again, that would be very symbolic in the fact, all they're caring about is making sure they have enough toilet paper, And it's all about eating and staying comfortable.
It's all metabolic, right? If you're
all metabolic, that's right.
About being a determinist materialist, right? It's all about putting it in and processing your ATP source, and ain't nothing pretty there.
Yeah, that's right, exactly right, and it's right. It is humiliating. That's life. That's having a body. Bodies are humiliating. There's no dying with dignity.
Right.
That's all they do, right? Because all dying is a deep, deep humiliation.
Right.
Dignity there, it's humiliation, but that's what they want you to die with dignity. They want to drug you out so that you're not aware of what's going on. They want, and they even get a medication to the loved ones. But you don't want to have any agitation. We can't embrace death. And so not being able to embrace death, we're not able to embrace life either. So the science of psychomoralitics, it is the alternative, it's the antidote to the mental health system. It breaks the fetters of the mental health system. It gets people out of the mental health system. It gives people the courage to face up to the enslavement of our governmental and cultural structures. And so, if I were to say, then it's based on what we bring to this is really you mentioned we can't get an MRI of the soul, but what we've done as a working clinical model, we have a topography of the soul. We see the soul based on the id. No, not Freud's id, but the id as in imago Dei. All right, so initially enough, Freud just kind of grew up in that Austrian, Catholic Austrian culture and just kind of turned a lot of Catholic elements on their head. Okay, right. Made the ego, that beast inside us, as our essence. And that's what the mental health system still does to this day. They still feed that beast. They still cater to that beast.
Well, you're treating, in psychomoralitics, you're treating causes, not symptoms. It seems like so much of the modern mental health system is just putting a bandaid on a cut or giving a cough drop to somebody with a sore throat or with a cough. And it's treating the symptoms, but it's not getting at the root of the problem, because since the modern mental health system sees people in purely materialistic terms, not as a composite of body and soul, not as this hylomorphic being, but as just a decaying hunk of flesh who has these predetermined cognitive properties based on the makeup of their brains and their genes, then it fundamentally lacks the ability to treat what the root cause is. It can only treat the symptoms, and when you're treating the symptoms, oftentimes you'll feel better while getting worse. Is that right? Am I
exactly right? That? Oh, absolutely right. And it's because, and again, those symptoms like whack-a-mole, right? So right. There's a symptom, let's put that one down, another one pops up over here, and I've seen this happen before my eyes. It's amazing, because you're not treating the etiology, you're not treating the pride and self-love. If you diminish that pride and self-love, all the symptomology is going to diminish as well. All the ego reactivity is going to diminish as well, because you're treating the very cause of this. And that's just the maturation process on the natural level. That's what psychomoralitics deals with. You don't have to be Christian, you just have to be human. And of course, if you are Christian, you're more apt to accept this anthropology as worldview. That life, yes, is a meat grinder, that it's the cross, and but therefore the essence of the very remedy to that's going to be found in the heart of reality, which is Christ crucified. So, but they do treat it. It makes it worse, and that's what the medication does as well, because the medication treats the symptom, and so it takes that pain away. But what happens? You're still functioning, and this is another study from the drug companies. The longer you're on a medication, the more sensitive, susceptible, and extreme is the symptomology. It is you're there forever, and it makes it worse and worse and worse and worse. And so it's like if you're out hiking out in the Glacier National Park out here. Well, you break your leg, all right, and so say theoretically, you just happen to have in your ass pack, you got some morphine there. And so so you want to hike out, right? So okay, well, you know what? I'm going to shoot my leg with morphine so I can get out of here. Otherwise, I'm going to die. Get not ate by a lion, but by a bear or something, right? So and so you hike out on a leg, right? But of course, it's going to make it worse. It might even go to a compound fracture or something. But once you get to civilization, well, you're not going to continue to shoot it up with more and more narcotics so I can walk. No, you're going to take care of the break. But that's what they do in the mental health system. Not only they give you the medication to take away the symptomology, take away the pain to numb it, and then they keep you on it for the rest of your life.
Right.
And it only makes matters worse, much worse.
Is it okay if I don't think this is aptly described a pivot. Could we zoom on one of, everyone out there is collectively groaning. They know Dave and I, we have this book coming out, No Christian Feminism, and we want to talk about the intersexual relations, men and female, males and females, what it's done in particular to marriage, but in the pre-marriage courtship phase, it's all DSM-5 deterministic materialism stuff. What the psych establishment, together with our the deciders of the state, what have they done? Aside, I think the answer is really clear. I think they've just denied it. They've abnegated the existence of the three staffs, the scepter, the crozier, and the cross. Can we talk? Is it okay with you, Dr. Dilsaver, if we talk some about this? Because this is a pet issue of ours, especially of Dave's. And I'd love to talk with you for the closing 15 minutes of that zoomed-in dimension of the psych state.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, right, that the American Psychological Association just came out with that study that said traditional masculinity is not healthy. Well, so what's that mean? So they're saying that natural law is wrong. They're saying that if you accept and this is again how all the contradictions in this mentality. They're saying if you're saying that you're XY, that's a given, and someone else's XX, that's a given, that's male and female. Well, that you're wrong somehow, but you're the one being a materialist. Yeah, what? This is biology. This is empiricism. It's a given. But they're the ones denying that most basic biological reality.
They don't get that.
No. Wait a minute. Where in the world did the Catholic Church get this weird idea that sex is for having babies? Like what? Now, where did they pull that out of? What? It wasn't given to them, in some private revelation. This is called biology. Hello, it's absurd. They reject the most basic biological facts, and so this is something that we have to again get in touch with natural law, and that's where the real issue is. And we can preach the gospel all we want, but people don't accept natural law, and that's why even in the Catholic Church you have people that are believers but who don't accept natural law, and so therefore don't have an integral understanding of the human person. And it's throughout the church as well, because we do not really, again, we talk about intentionality. There needs to be intentionality in masculinity and femininity. And especially with femininity, we don't understand femininity at all in our culture. Everything's a masculine value system.
Right.
And so, again, you have, it's going to be, okay, so women, and something about women, but what is it, and so but again, we want to see them either in their erotic value or how well they can do a man's job.
Right.
Which is, again, those are masculine values, but women embrace, either one, and often both. I like to, knock on Trump a little bit there, especially with this to be devil's advocate. But again, here he is. He's not a deep moral guy, but of course he's had to deal with reality. So because he had to put skyscrapers up, right? So they don't just stay up by smoke and mirrors, and so at least why he's not a politician. But again, he's someone that's going to push feminism. He pushes feminism all the time, and that's why there's not going to be salvation in him, no turnaround for this country. He's pushing feminism, and at the same time, of course, he's also totally into the erotic value of the woman as well. They go hand in hand. In both in the 20s, it was both the Planned Parenthood, the women and the flappers, and also the 19th Amendment, women's suffrage. They go hand in hand, this concept. So we have to really rediscover what it means to be truly masculine and truly feminine. And it's not being done anywhere in our culture.
No. Our culture only values activity and strength, and the two marks of womanhood are passivity and receptivity, as embodied by the Blessed Virgin Mary. That's authentic femininity. And in a culture that only values somebody for what they can do, what they can say, what they can give actively to society and give proximately to society, because also what women, when they're acting qua women, they give remotely to society. They instill their kids with love. They infuse that love into their children from the household, and they teach children who then go out and touch society directly. But women have this remote tie with the outward world, whereas men have a proximate tie with the outward world, and a society that only values results, that only values capital and things. It can't comprehend that. It can't comprehend the value of women when they do take on these properly feminine roles of passivity and receptivity.
Right, that's right. And that sense of the sacredness with the R for us, and that's the reason we have also the capital, the only reason we go out in the world, is to preserve, enhance, promote that femininity, that grace there, the woman and child, all these things that we as men are actually dedicated to in our lives. So that are the real reason for us to do anything in our lives.
Yeah, so that's an undeniable critique of President Trump. We say all day long, we support Trump, we support the president. He's done a lot of good, but the big blemish on the presidency is the LGBT/feminism stuff. Not even, not the stuff that a lot of the political Republicans are going to say are the big blemishes. No one talks about the feminism. And leave the locker room talk, if we're going to euphemize, aside. It's just a lot of endorsement of feminism. How does one in this age, assuming the best, that Trump gets reelected in 6 months or whatever, how does one reinstantiate, Dr. Dilsaver, the patriarchy, the real patriarchy of the scepter, the crozier, the cross, the three staffs, the priest, prophet, and king of each household? How do we instantiate that in a popular way where people know what we're talking about? They don't call us sexist. Is it possible to do it all?
Well, but you're right. You said it. It's house by house. Okay, so that's going to, can you establish yourself as a priest, prophet, and king of your house? Which, again, that's not, as easy as it sounds.
Our com box just blew up, by the way. If you're watching this, there will be many live comments to that. But yeah, absolutely, dead on, man. It's
not that, and so. It's going to be about, I have to accept the fact that, no, but I think you are a sexist, okay? So you can't, that's the way, but that's because.
I wear it as a badge of honor. Is that even?
When I came out with the book, patriarchy, back when I wrote that, patriarchy. I mean, Father Joseph Essio, actually, the Ignatius Press, they said it was too controversial of an issue.
It's very clear. It's actually very clear. Yeah.
And but sexist. Well, I always say, well, you're sexist. Well, but that's not really your fault because nature is sexist. Okay, it is. You're male or you're female, and that means accepting the limitations of being either male or female. There are limitations there, and there are humiliations there, because we have enfleshment, and enfleshment is necessarily a limitation less than the angels. It's humiliation. Now, that's your real first principle of theology of the body. The flesh is a humiliation, a limitation. So you accept that. So sex, and nature's sexist, but that's why the Catholic Church is sexist. But the Catholic Church is sexist, nature's sexist, because why? Because, I guess God's sexist, then, take it up with him.
But I mean, so what does this mean? Because I show my students, I'm a teacher, I show my students the Lord of the Rings trilogy, extended editions, so it's like 13 hours. Their second semester.
For fancy nerds.
Honors.
Just joking, I love Tolkien.
Yeah, but do you know that the only, I think, proper way to do Tolkien, to read or to view Tolkien through the movies, Dr. Dilsaver, is, according to Dr. Peter Kraft and Joseph Peirce, who is to view not as a one lead character plot structure, but three lead characters. There's so many characters, right? You got Frodo as the priest, and Gandalf as the prophet, and Aragorn is the king. And they're literally each the main character, and the story would be incomplete without the priest, prophet, king, because even though it's not very preachy, and nothing's on the nose the way it's all preachy and on the nose with Tolkien's friend C.S. Lewis, it's very childish. Tolkien hated allegory. He didn't like it all to be right there at the surface. You couldn't have the full story without these three guys. It wouldn't be Catholic without the full backdrop of priest, prophet, and king. How can we just run through really quick the archetypes of what does a priest do, what does a prophet do, what does a king do?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and I haven't. So does Joseph actually talk about those three aspects?
It's more Peter Kraft's thing. He gave a great talk at Biola University that's been watched many times. I show it several times, and he just makes the case. Look, Frodo's self-sacrificing. The people that follow the priest is the representative of the people to God, right? Whereas the prophet's the representative of God to the people. The priest wins for the people by losing, by sacrificing his body, whereas, not so with the prophet. The king, like Aragorn, he wins by winning. He goes out and he chastises the foe, whereas the priest chastises himself, and the prophet chastises the people of God. How are all of the, forget the Tolkien stuff, I guess, but how are maybe Tolkien nerds out there pumping their fists? But just how do all of those? Isn't it impossible to do this? You said it's easy. It's harder than it sounds to do this as a man. This is our path to heaven. If we get married, we have to be the priest, the prophet, and the king, just to get ourselves and our kids and our wives to heaven.
Yes. Well, we actually are. I'm actually, my church and Michael says we've been talking about this. There's actually an idea of how to do this. We kind of look at the priestly part is that knowledge part. You get challenged men. You have to know what the truth of the matter is. What the church actually teaches. I mean, you can tell them, hey, you're the head of your family. Okay, all right, big deal. But now what? And honestly, how many men out there are saying? Right. They ask me all the time. Yeah, now what? And I'm going, what do you mean now what? Well, yeah, what am I supposed to do? What battle am I?
I don't want to cut you off. I'm just saying we get this all the time too. Like, what does it mean for your wife to have to owe you submission to your authority? It's just what it sounds. It means you have a temporal and spiritual authority over your household, and it's not bullying to use it. Sorry, go on. I just wanted to pat you on the back.
Yeah, well, that means this is because when you're out there, or so in your home, believe me, it's going to be a moral dynamics there, and there's a whole spiritual battle going on there, and with a man and a woman, sometimes you have to be that king, absolutely crucified. It's all you can do. You're like Christ the King on the cross, and you're suffering it well, because that's just the situation. Now that's what we'll all call the go there, but that a lot of times today, just because of the animosity and the pushback, you have to be there. But the battles, they ask, what about the battles? Well, okay, what battle am I supposed to fight? I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm going, and I laugh because I'm saying, man, really? You have to go out looking for battles? They're like they just come to me like they're all the time. I don't do it. I think I'm relatively sitting here relatively unantagonistic, but the battles are all the time, all around me. They find me because why? If you're living the truth, if you're walking the walk, you're going to be attacked. And the problem is that the vast majority of Catholics, and Catholic men especially, because they're men, they tend to compartmentalize. That's what they do. They compartmentalize. And they do not live their faith out 24/7 in all aspects of their life. Because if you do that, you will be attacked. You will be, believe me, they're not, you're not giving your pinch of incense to political correctness in the corporation. In the state structure, or I went to a gun store once, and it was It was at Cabela's. I know around Halloween time, and I was gonna buy a gun. And there was a woman behind the counter, and I was waiting for the other guy to show me his gun. And she goes, "Can I help you?" I go, "I was waiting for so and so." She goes, "Oh, what? You just don't want to work with me because I'm a woman?" I go, "That's right." And it was Halloween, so remember, I go, "And also, you're a witch." She was dressed like a witch, yeah. So, and so, the funny thing was, she looked at me like going, like she what, I'm gonna, whatever, like she wanted to kill the manager. I go, "Hey, wait a minute, I don't work for you."
What am I gonna do? I'll go to Bass Pro Shops and get it if you guys don't want to serve me.
Yeah, well, Cabela's bought out Bass Pro Shops.
Oh, dang it!
Edit
that point out.
Where were you? Yeah, that was big. Like 2 years ago, right? 3 years ago.
Wait, you have some epic words in your book. Kingship, you have to establish your kingship, and sometimes that means putting down insurrections. But you also have some great words in your book that are about humiliation in men. And this is from the 3 Marks of Manhood, where sometimes you'll give a directive and it'll be imperfectly complied with. And there's an element of patience with being the king of your home, where, you have to deal with the humiliation of having your orders not complied with perfectly, and you have to embrace that and be gentle. And that's what differentiates, say, a Christian man from a Muslim man, or something to that effect.
Right, that's right. And now see how this segues into Psychomoralitics, because Psychomoralitics is about what? About humiliation, not allowing the ego to dominate. So, and what happens is, as Christians, or somebody who's in the right and who's being justly exercising his kingship, says, "I want this done. That's wrong. I want it done this way," and do it that way. And then it's not done that way, or there's an intentional disobedience or something. And so then you give license to that pride and self-love to go get at it. This is wrong, and now I'm really pissed off. But what's fueling that is not so much the injustice against God's way, the law. It's about, it makes me mad. It's my pride and self-love, my humiliation. Things weren't done the way I want them done. And then you get the beast comes out. And see, that's a different dynamics. And we do. And and when I work with people and I work with men, I say, we're going through a different level of courage here.
Yeah.
It's not this jock courage and machismo courage. And I was in the Marine Corps twice. They say, the first time youthful exuberance, the second time, now that's pathology. I can say that myself. But but that's all based on pride, right? You go to boot camp, they break you down, they humiliate you, and then they build you up as a Marine. Because now they control your pride and self-love. So you go out there, and you will, sacrifice and maybe even die for the platoon, especially if you're out in the middle of nowhere. But you're also a murderer for the platoon. It's a pride and self-love thing. It's a jock mentality. Now, there's a certain courage there, strength there, delayed gratification. But, all right, gentlemen, jocks aren't known for their moral courage, are they? For their moral rectitude. That's not what they're known for. Quite the opposite. They get out of the sporting life, and then they usually fall into a lot of decadence because they need ego gratification in some way, and it becomes dysfunctional, not societally acceptable. But we're talking about a deeper courage that's not afraid of humiliation. That's based on Christ the King crucified. So that's the deeper courage we have to find, because this other stuff's not going to hack it. If you're going out there and you're building you up, come on guys, yeah, we're a bunch of knights in shining armor and everything. You think you're going out there and you're going to train for this and you're going to be pumping yourself up. No way. You're not going to withstand the onslaught, because not today. We're not the men. We're not those men today. Number one, and and the forces are too powerful. I don't care how hard you train; they can blow you out. In the smithereens with the push of a button. You better be based on Christ crucified, and not be afraid of humiliation, and be a man of sorrows, and then do what you have to do anyway for love of faith and family.
That's it. I mean, that punch the clock. That's the whole key to what 99% of the population is using as the path to heaven, our vocation as married men. That's it. But is it fair to say easier said than done, Dr. Dilsaver?
No, absolutely. It's easier said than done, and it's a simple process. So it's not really hard to ascend to the truth, but to do it, absolutely, it requires you being to annihilate yourself for love of God, love of family, love of your faith. But perfect love casts out all fear.
Right.
Right. So we have this duty to take up these three marks of manhood, to be the priest, prophet, and king of our family. And we have the duty to call our spouse and our children to perfection and to guide them and to lead them. And that means laying down orders and directives. But at the same time, we have to have a spirit of gentility so that we are not harsh with our wives. And that's where you find this balance where the Bible instructs us, do not be harsh with your wives, for they're the weaker sex. So even though our standards might not be met when we're giving out these orders, and that they should be, but we have to be Christ-like and be, yes, the crucified Lord, the crucified King, the King that condescends to be at the level of those who he loved, at the level of his beloved. And you had a brilliant treatment of that in your book, and I think it threads the needle between this kind of tendency towards pagan barbarism towards women and this neo-paganism that's obsequious to women. And it was just beautiful. Yeah. Well, can I take us out on this one? Please, if you had anything to say to that, go ahead. I was just going to ask one final question, but if you want to respond to that, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Sure. Just in closing, unless Tim has something to say too, he might have a final question for you. In closing, is a Thomistic alternative to the secular mental health system realistic in the modern era, given the secular zeitgeist?
It is realistic if we accept the reality of the situation. If we accept the social political reality, if we accept what's happened in Western civilization, if we accept that, again, it's very much a Catholicism today of grassroots initiative. So that means we have to accept, number one, that this culture, Western civilization, is irredeemable. It's an apostate culture. It's rejected Christ. It's based on the rejection of Christ. There's no redemption of our social political culture. None. Zero. It's a done deal. We have to therefore build. So there's no Benedict option. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's in the air we breathe. It's ubiquitous. You can't hide. So you better develop an attitude. Right? And you guys are doing that. Attitude, the bad attitude, a contemptuous attitude.
Check.
It's one thing we do.
We just lost 5 subscribers.
And it's contemptus mundi, contempt of the world, the flesh and the devil. And yes, contempt of our own pride and self-love, first and foremost. So you accept that fact that we're not going to be working within that system. We're going to do things that are truly Catholic. We're going to be truly counterculture. We're going to be truly subculture. And so don't look to the state. Don't look to the mental health system. Don't look to those entities. It's time for entrepreneurship, being truly kings. You're not going to have any king come down the road. It's not going to be some president. It's not going to be some pope. It's not going to be some bishop or priest. It's going to be only you, the Catholic men out there, that can lead your families and create this new culture. And you can, as a grassroots movement, embrace psychomoralitics, which again is going to empower you to do what you got to do, because it has to counteract that mental health system, which is so powerful and does permeate every aspect of our lives, and including our Catholic spirituality. It's horrendous. You hear from the pulpit all the time. And so we have to go deeper. And what means is really, again, that our faith has to go deeper, deeper, deeper. And that means simply it has to be more ordered toward, it has to embrace Christ crucified. It's always the cross. The cross is always the touchstone of any orthodoxy, of any traditionalism, of any authentic Christianity. The cross. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's kind of, I don't have a full question. Just that's kind of the Benedict option, though, isn't it? I mean, it's just if there's no leader to lead you, you better become your own leader of your own household, even including your probably your bishop or priest nearby. You got.
Yeah, well, it's no problem about the bishops and priests weren't supposed to lead. They weren't. They were there to minister unto the faithful. I mean, praise God. As our culture, as Christianity developed, Christendom won, was top heavy, and that's fine. But today, it's not that way. It's we follow or inform Catholic conscience. What does Holy Mother Church teach? Yeah. And a lot of times the problem, even with traditionalism or whatever else, they're looking for a perfect priest or a perfect bishop or a perfect pope, and that's not Catholic. Yeah. The Holy Catholic Church is perfect. She's the spotless bride of Christ. And it's your duty to follow that. As Connor Newman says, that is the primordial vicar of Christ. So that's what you need to do. And when I say it's not a Benedictine option, because with the Benedictine concept of Saint Benedict, to begin with, was that you go and you go to find some place away from the flesh pots, okay? Well, you can't do that today. Again, it's in the air we breathe. It's 5G, okay? It's right there, man. You can't get away from it. So you better have an attitude and be able to walk among them with an attitude. Accept the fact that you're an outlaw, a retrograde. Accept the fact that you are considered to be a bad person. And focus on Christ crucified and lead your family and have the courage to do it. But you have to evaluate the culture for what it is first and foremost. If you don't take that baseline that this culture is irredeemable, you're not going to be able to be effective in bringing about a new Christendom on a grassroots level.
Dude, you're awesome, man. There's nothing trendy or superficial in what you're saying here. It's everything good in traditionalism, everything good in, the Christ crucified, which is the beauty of the earth, and it's everything good in what we hope to do by reinstantiating the priest, prophet, and king of each household, the man. And, we really appreciate your time.
Yeah, please, everybody do go and purchase, first of all, Psychomoralitics by Dr. Dilsaver, and also, I would recommend, just on a personal level, The 3 Marks of Manhood, and I'm going to continue tweeting that out. It's actually on, I think it's like $5 for a hard copy on TAN right now. They have a clearance going on, and you can even get more off of that by using the code Gordon15. So please buy Dr. Dilsaver's books. He is an eloquent writer, and as you can see, a clear and concise thinker. And I'm just really grateful we were able to track you down through Mr. Church. So thank you to Mike Church also for kind of connecting us. And I'm really just appreciative for your time, and I know Tim is, so thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you, Gordon brothers. It was great meeting you. May God bless you and keep you, and maybe I'll see you sometime down in California if they were down my old haunts.
Let's have dinner,
absolutely.
Man. Yeah, get the fams together.
I'd love to stay in touch too. You have my email, and I hope you don't mind if I shoot you some follow-up emails.
Absolutely, I'd love to. It'd be great, wonderful.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Dilsaver.
Okay, God bless.
Peace.
God bless you.